When the Bible talks about beginnings, it talks about its fathers. At the beginning of a man's story, his genealogy is recited. It gives him standing. You understand where he fits in the world, his social standing. Our reading today is of a strong woman who is accepted and significant in the Hebrew Testament. Ruth came from away. How many of us have come from away at some time? When we meet people, we often share our roots. Sometimes it's easy to share. Accents, skin color, hair color, and although it can be considered rude or even racist to ask people where they're from, we are a curious society. When I lived in New Zealand and had a funny accent, I loved talking about Canada. When I moved back to Canada and had a funny accent, I loved talking about New Zealand. So I guess each to their own, right? Some of us have been fortunate to find our place and stay where we are planted. We have history where we are. Others love the adventure of moving. Neither moving or staying are good or bad, they just are. The story of Ruth is typically told over 2 weeks. Naomi and her daughter-in-law Ruth were both widowed and moving to escape troubling times at home. Ruth and Naomi had returned from Moab, and without help from Naomi's family, Ruth would have nowhere to turn. When they arrived back to Naomi's roots or home, there were no social services in place as there are today. However, the family Naomi married into should have provided a kinsman redeemer in the unfortunate event something happened to their husbands. One whose responsibility would be to take care of either Naomi or Ruth and provide for them through the marriage contract between Naomi's father and her husband. None had come yet forward, and so Ruth went to work. Ruth goes to the largest field to glean the harvest surplus from the edges of the field. She needs food for them to live, and she works hard. It was law that reapers not go over the field a second time, so the poor could glean anything that was left. Now she was a stranger, a Moabite, and a sworn enemy of the Israelites, yet they accepted her. And she works hard because as a widow of an Israelite, it is her legal right to join them. Boaz comes and shares a meal and conversation with her and is obviously impressed. He likely has heard amongst family gossip that Naomi is home again with her daughter-in-law. He might have assumed that this was her daughter-in-law. Just as he said Ruth is under God's wing, it is Boaz who is godlike in his care for Ruth, as he puts her under his care and concern. He gives her a safe place to work in a society that neither is gentle nor just. Then when Ruth goes home that evening, Naomi tells her that Boaz is one of their kinsman redeemers. In other words, he's a close relative on whom they can rely on for help. And so, Ruth begins her new life in Bethlehem. These are powerful stories, rich in history, honor, and drama. The story links them to a new beginning. New beginnings aren't always easy. Change isn't always easy. As we work toward a spiritual kingdom where justice rules, how much do we accomplish towards God's work? In the words of Bishop Romero, nothing we do is complete. But it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's grace to enter. We are prophets of a future not our own. Boaz is a man of God. He treated Ruth with respect and kindness and with grace. It is how we are asked to treat each other today. Not just those of us in the pew here, but to each other in our community, to live a life where social justice is important. That important change, new beginnings, right here. begins with a vision from deep within our imagination, which we are capable and willing to act upon. Jonathan Schnell in The Unconquerable World writes, individual hearts and minds change because we become aware of one another. When the impossible becomes possible. When the old regime, a moment ago, so impressive, vanishes like a mirage. Nothing we discover, think, believe, or accomplish is permanent. As I entered ministry and moved from congregation to congregation, I often felt like I was part of the fabric of the congregation, that together we created a quilt that covers our shared faith community. It occurred to me one day that I answered my call to move with passion and with what I think are perfectly wonderful ideas based on experiences from my home church, volunteering, and my former career. Changes are always based on those ideas, hopefully made with grace and with respect for a blended heritage. Together creating a pattern for this community of faith, like a quilt, emerging from these changes. It occurred to me that when it comes time, and it will come, the day will come, for ministers to leave or maybe retire, you may choose to keep some of those changes they've encouraged, and those squares of variation will be woven into your quilt pattern and into your history. You may very likely return to treasured traditional rhythms and take on changes with the next minister who adds their rhythms to your community and weaves their squares into the quilt. We all weave our personalities and experiences into the pattern of our community of faith, just as the community of faith weaves into the minister's pattern. It is our responsibility to wrap each other in a boundless quilt of love, so together we can learn ideas or colors that best blend, and to face the challenging points, to open our hearts to new patterns, ensuring this quilt is never too tightly bound, so there's always room for another square, another color, with wide enough sashing for breathing spaces so we don't suffocate from lack of growth. Supporting us in this work is the heart of the quilt, the layer of batting, warm and natural, soft and strong, a sacred foundation for our thoughts and prayers, weaving through each of the layers, through every square, like variegated threads embracing and holding the heart of each other. Ruth understood this fabric of life. She understood the need for prayer and for faith, like the variegated threads embracing her new life, and understood the intimate concept of holding the heart of each other. For today, we will never see the whole picture of this congregation or for Doreen, for it is ever-changing, and as sad as it is, we ministers are not the pinnacle of this congregation's creation. With humility, we need to accept ourselves as part of the creation, as part of the beginning, and together we move toward a greater and more genuine goal of peace with justice. Justice for those who cannot speak for themselves, like the widow Ruth, as she moved forward in her new life, and for the vulnerability of worthiness as perceived in the eyes of her culture. We never truly know the consequences of our actions, what people may see in us when we are not looking. Many small actions accompanied by people motivated by compassion have changed history. Alexander McLaren says, kindness makes a person attractive. If you would win the world, melt it. Do not hammer it. Or for Mamie Adams, always she went to the branch post office in her town because the postal employees were always so friendly. She went there to buy stamps just before Christmas one year, and the lines were particularly long. Someone kindly pointed out that there was no need to wait in line because there was a stamp machine in the lobby. "I know," said Mamie, "but the machine won't ask me about my arthritis." As we begin to understand the intimate concept of holding the heart of each other as it was used in the scripture, we appreciate that this is the most inclusive term for an authentic person. It is a part of our being where we desire, deliberate, and decide. It has been described as the place of consciousness and decisive spiritual activity, the complete term for a person as a whole, one's feelings, desires, passion, thought, understanding, and will, and the center of a person, the place to which God turns. We can act out of intuition. We can act out of compulsion. We can act out of faith. Whatever motivates us, we are transformed in the process. By seeking truth in love, we are working for a more just and peaceful world. We are more authentic, believable, and infectious. It is through this authenticity, this believability and infectiousness that we will grow in faith and in relationships. Thomas Carlyle says, "Show me the man you honor, and I will know what kind of man you are." And so I wonder, what motivation will transform Doreen and the congregation, and how will you be stitched into this quilt of love for St. Andrew's United Church in Eston? I wonder how you will grow in compassion and faith. I wonder what you will share to change the history you make this day, in this time, and in this place. And may God bless you on this journey.